They didn't knock first. I still remember that sound, the sharp metal clang of the gate swinging open like it didn't belong to us anymore. My mother was in the living room, wrapped in her faded blue shawl, the one she'd had since before I was born. She hadn't been well for weeks. The doctor said her condition needed rest, quiet, stability, not stress. Definitely not strangers storming into her home. But that morning, that's exactly what happened. I looked out the window and saw two uniformed security officers and a woman in a stiff beige suit walking up our driveway like they owned it. Clipboard in hand, chin raised. That kind of look you don't forget. The kind that says, "You're already in trouble, you just don't know it yet." My mother's voice came from behind me, weak but alert. "Who is it?" I didn't answer right away. Something in my chest tightened. Because I already knew. "HOA," I said quietly. She closed her eyes. We hadn't even finished processing the last warning letter they'd sent. Something about property violations and unauthorized modifications. Vague. Cold. Like it was written by someone who had never stepped foot inside a real home. But this wasn't a letter. This was a raid. The woman didn't introduce herself when I opened the door. She simply held up a paper and said, "We're here to inspect and document violations under the authority of the Homeowners Association." No notice. I asked. "You were notified," she replied flatly. That was a letter, not permission to enter my property. She didn't even blink. Non-compliance escalates enforcement. Behind her, one of the officers was already taking photos. Of our porch, our windows, even the old flower pots my mother used to take care of every morning before she got sick. "Stop," I said, stepping forward. "You don't have the right to do this." That's when my mother tried to stand up. I turned just in time to see her gripping the arm of the couch, her hands shaking. "Please," she said, her voice barely holding together. "We didn't do anything wrong." The woman glanced at her, just one quick look, and then back at her clipboard. "No one is above HOA regulations, ma'am." That sentence, I still hear it in my head. No empathy, no hesitation, just rules. I felt something shift inside me at that moment. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, something sharper. Because this didn't feel like enforcement. It felt personal. They moved past me like I wasn't even there. Into the house, into her space, opening doors, pointing at things, whispering to each other like they were building a case. "Document this," the woman said. "Unauthorized interior modifications." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Interior? You don't control the inside of our house. She finally looked at me properly then. A small, almost amused smile touched her lips. "We control compliance." My mother sat back down, her breathing uneven now. I rushed to her side, but she waved me off, trying to stay composed. "I told you not to fight them," she whispered. But this wasn't fighting. This was wrong. And they knew it. The officer near the hallway started opening cabinets, taking pictures of things that had nothing to do with any violation. Family photos, old documents, even the medicine bottles on the shelf. "That's private," I snapped. "No such thing during an active inspection," the woman replied. "Inspection? No. This was intimidation. And the worst part? They were counting on us staying quiet. Counting on my mother being too weak to argue. Counting on me not knowing what they could and couldn't do. But they made one mistake. A big one. They assumed we had nothing to hide. They didn't know I had already started recording the moment I saw them step onto our property. And they definitely didn't know what else I had. Because while they were busy tearing through our home, acting like they had absolute authority, I was watching them carefully. Not just what they were doing, but what they were saying. And the more they spoke, the more I realized something didn't add up. Their words didn't match their actions. Their authority didn't match the law. And the woman leading it all? She was getting a little too comfortable. Too confident. Like she had done this before and gotten away with it. I leaned closer to my mother and lowered my voice. "Just stay calm," I said. "This is going to stop." She looked at me, confused, tired. But there was a small flicker of trust in her eyes. Because she knew me. She knew I wouldn't say something like that unless I meant it. Across the room, the woman turned slightly, her voice cutting through the air again. "Make sure you get everything," she told the officers. "We may need this for enforcement action." Enforcement action. Those words hung in the room like a threat. But this time, I didn't feel powerless hearing them. Because now I understood what they were trying to do. And more importantly, I knew exactly how it was going to end. And it wasn't going to end the way she thought. The moment she said, "We may need this for enforcement action," I knew she had already crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I slowly stood up. Didn't rush. Didn't argue. Because now, I wasn't reacting. I was waiting. The officer near the hallway opened another drawer, this time pulling out old documents, flipping through them like they meant nothing. That's when I said it. Go ahead, I spoke calmly. Take as many pictures as you want. The woman paused. Just for a second. Maybe it was my tone. Maybe it was the fact that I wasn't panicking anymore. She turned toward me, narrowing her eyes slightly. Excuse me. I took a step forward. You heard me, I said. Document everything. There was a shift in the room. Subtle, but real. Because confidence like that, it makes people uncomfortable when they think they're the ones in control. She let out a short, dry laugh. Finally decided to cooperate. I looked straight at her. No, I said quietly. I just want to make sure everything you're doing is on record. Silence. One of the officers stopped moving. Record? She repeated. That's when I pulled my phone out and raised it slightly. I've been recording since the moment you stepped onto my property. The air changed instantly. You could feel it. The officer near the kitchen straightened up. The other one exchanged a quick glance with him. But her? She tried to hold her ground. You don't have permission to record us, she said sharply. I almost smiled. This is my house, I replied. And you walked in without a warrant. That word hit. Warrant. Not notice. Not violation. Warrant. Because suddenly, this didn't sound like HOA business anymore. It sounded like something else. Something serious. She adjusted her posture, her voice tightening just a little. We are authorized under HOA guidelines. No, I cut in. HOA guidelines don't override the law. Now the silence wasn't subtle anymore. It was heavy, uncomfortable, the kind that makes people rethink every step they just took. My mother looked at me, her eyes wide now. Not scared this time. Confused. Hopeful. Because she could feel it too. The shift. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough to keep it controlled. You entered my home without consent, I said. You searched private areas. You documented personal belongings. I paused, then added quietly. And you did all of that on camera. One of the officers took a step back. That's when the woman finally lost a bit of that confidence. You're overreacting, she said quickly. This is standard procedure. Then you won't mind if I send this to a lawyer, I replied. That did it. The word lawyer hit harder than anything else. Because now, this wasn't just about control. This was about consequences. She glanced at the officers, then back at me. For the first time since she walked in, she hesitated. You're making a mistake, she said, but her voice wasn't as steady anymore. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. You already did. Another silence. Longer this time. Then one of the officers cleared his throat. Ma'am, maybe we should. She shot him a look. But it was too late. The moment had cracked. And everyone in the room knew it. I took one last step forward. You have two choices, I said calmly. You leave right now, or you explain all of this in court. My mother's breathing had steadied now. She was watching quietly, holding on to every word. Because for the first time that day, we weren't the ones being pushed. She exhaled slowly, her grip tightening around the clipboard. Then, without another word, she turned. Let's go, she said sharply. Just like that. No apology. No explanation. They walked out the same way they came in. Like they owned everything. But this time, it felt different. Because now they knew. They didn't. I closed the door behind them and stood there for a moment. The house felt quiet again. But not the same quiet as before. This one felt heavier. Real. My mother looked at me, her voice soft. Is it over? I walked back to her, kneeling beside her chair. Yeah, I said gently. It's over. But the truth? It wasn't. Because what she didn't know yet was that this wasn't just going to stop here. A week later, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Apparently, someone had reviewed the footage. Apparently, they didn't like what they saw. And the woman who walked into our home like she had all the power, she wasn't running anything anymore. Some people say nothing really changes with HOAs. But sometimes, all it takes is one moment. One mistake. One person who refuses to stay quiet. They raided my sick mother's home, thinking we wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. And that mistake? It cost her everything.